This Day in Sports History. Hey, and welcome back to another edition of This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network. You can find more podcasts and a whole lot more info at sportshistorynetwork.com. It's October 17th, and on this day in 1989, the well-worn sports phrase, "shook up the world," took on a literal meaning as the world actually shook prior to a World Series game. It was the Bay Area series between the Oakland A's and the San Francisco Giants. The A's had won the first two games at home, and the series moved across the Bay Bridge to San Francisco for Game 3. At 5:04 p.m. Pacific Time, ABC's Al Michaels and Tim McCarver were reviewing video highlights of the first two games when the earthquake hit. Here's the ABC television broadcast from that night.
Flash forward to the bottom of the fourth inning. Dave Parker barely, by inches, just misses a home run. Candy Maldonado with the hesitation, allowing Jose Canseco to score, and he fails to get Dave Parker at second base, so the Oakland A's take.
Tell you what, we're having an earthquake.
Well, folks, that's the greatest open in the history of television, bar none. Yes, it certainly did. We're still here. We are still, as we can tell, on the air, and I guess you are hearing us, even though we have no picture and no return audio, and we will be back, we hope, from San Francisco in just a moment.
CBS Radio featured Jack Buck, Johnny Bench, and John Rooney, and they were in a commercial break when the earthquake struck, but Buck was able to add a little levity to the situation when they came back on air.
That was wild, wasn't it?
Well, it really was, John, and still a few aftershocks have happened since that time. The whole building and right below us, the floor just started shaking. Jack Buck standing here right now, and he just figured he'd just go right down below. You weren't nervous at all, were you, Jack?
No, I picked a spot down below, and I just felt sorry for those people that I was coming down on, but I thought I'd be all right. And I must say about Johnny Bench, folks, if he moved like that when he was playing, he'd have never hit into a double play. I never saw anybody move that fast in my life.
63,000 people were filing into the seats at Candlestick Park at the time. Some cheered after the initial quake, others were terrified. One umpire actually ran out from the locker room in his underwear. Players in the locker room feared that they might be buried alive. The stadium suffered very little damage, and there were many who wondered why they just couldn't go ahead and play the game. The situation outside the stadium, though, was a much different scene. The Cypress Street Viaduct collapsed, killing 42 people. Buildings and parking garages crumbled. In total, 67 people died, but the World Series game is actually credited with saving hundreds, if not thousands of lives, and here's why. Without a game, thousands more would have been on the freeways heading home from work. Instead, they were either at Candlestick Park or had left work early to watch the game in a local bar. Commissioner Fay Vincent, who was in attendance, did not hesitate to call the game off and initially rescheduled it for the 22nd. Delays in restoring transmission links delayed it another 5 days. San Francisco's mayor actually wanted to delay the resumption of the series for a month, but Commissioner Vincent said that they could not wait that long, and he put several major league cities on notice that they may actually end up hosting the World Series, but it didn't come to that. On October 27th, Game 3 was played in San Francisco, with Oakland winning 13-7, and they would close out the series the next night for a 4-game sweep. And that was the last time that the A's franchise actually won the World Series. On this day in 1998, the Temple Owls pulled off one of the biggest upsets in college football. The 0-6 Owls were 36-point underdogs and playing on the road against number 14 Virginia Tech, who were undefeated in their 5 games so far. Both of those teams were members of the Big East at this point. Temple had gone winless in their previous 26 league games. Also, the Owls were a beat-up team. Both first and second string quarterbacks were injured the prior week. They had 11 guys play in this game that had not even put on a uniform 6 weeks earlier. First-year head coach Bobby Wallace said he had guys playing positions that they had never practiced before, and it sure didn't look like things were going to go well for Temple early on. The Hokies led 17-0 midway through the second quarter, and they were threatening to punch in another one late in the half when Lamont McGeese fumbled the football and the Owls recovered on their own 1-yard line. Temple went on a quick 99-yard drive to make it a 17-7 game at the half. Temple started to make the Hokie faithful uncomfortable with a long, sustained drive in the third quarter, capped by a Jason McKee 13-yard TD run to make it a 17-14 game. Temple was playing with their third-string quarterback in this one, freshman Devin Scott, but he played more like an All-American in the second half. He hooked up with receiver Carlos Johnson for an 80-yard strike, and just like that, the Owls led 21-17. The Hokies fought back for another score to retake the lead, but the Owls had some fight left in them. They picked off a pair of passes in the second half, and those were their first 2 interceptions of the year. Now, this was week 7 of their schedule, and that's their first 2 interceptions. Devin Scott led the Owls back down the field and punched one in from a couple of yards out, and Temple led again 28-24 with 6 minutes left. Down 4 and needing a touchdown, Tech drove down the field and with 19 seconds left, faced a 4th and goal from the 5. But the Owls defense swarmed to the football and snuffed the run to secure an improbable win over the 14th-ranked Hokies. It was the first of only 2 wins that the Temple Owls would have that season. But the 36-point underdogs had overcome a 17-point deficit to shock the college football world. On this day in 1968, Sweden's Hans Gunnar Liljenwall became the first athlete to ever be disqualified from the Olympics for doping. All right, so he had to be some weightlifter who was doing anabolic steroids, right? Nope. Okay, he was a sprinter, and he was doping to make himself faster. Not a chance. Hans Gunnar Liljenwall was a pentathlete for the Swedish team. Pentathlon is an odd bag of 5 different events. There's fencing, swimming, equestrian, shooting, and running. Well, it seems that Hans was a little nervous prior to the shooting event, and according to him, drank 2 beers to calm his nerves. Even though beer was not on the banned list of substances, Liljenwall was disqualified, as were his Swedish pentathlete teammates. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? The first calculated height of Mount Everest was actually intentionally misreported. When Sir Edmund Wall calculated the height to be 29,000 feet, he thought that people would think that it was just rounded off and therefore not accurate at all. So he added 2 feet to his total to make it 29,002 feet. That actually turned out to be closer to what most consider the height of Everest to now be at 29,029 feet. That's all I've got for you today. On the way tomorrow, it's a special edition of This Day in Sports History. Don't miss it. I'll see you tomorrow. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.